The night market was alive with noise. Bright neon lights cut through the shadows, painting the streets in sick green and red. Traders shouted, buyers bargained, and slaves stood in silence. In the middle of the square, a tall platform was raised. Upon it stood girls, alien girls, thin and frightened, their eyes lowered. The dealer, a fat man with oily skin, moved across the stage like a performer. His voice rang out above the crowd. "Guaranteed satisfaction," he shouted. "Money back if she does not please you tonight. Come see for yourself." The crowd laughed and clapped. Men whistled, some holding credits in their hands. They saw the girls not as people but as toys. Each one was given a number. Each one was priced. Among them stood a girl with silver hair and pale blue skin. Her hands trembled, though she tried to hide it. She had been sold before, passed from one master to another, but tonight felt different. The dealer's words stung her ears like knives. Her heart pounded as her turn came. "Number 7, the dealer roared, grabbing her arm and dragging her to the front. The girl stumbled but kept her head down. "Look at her," the dealer cried, pushing her chin up for all to see. "Young, soft, obedient. Guaranteed, gentlemen. Money back if she does not satisfy you tonight." Laughter rolled through the crowd. Some men shouted crude offers. One asked if the dealer was lying again. Another demanded proof. The dealer only grinned, spreading his hands wide. "She will do what you want," he promised. "If she fails, you return her and I return your credits. No risk, a night of pleasure or your money back. Who will start the bidding?" The girl's stomach twisted. Shame burned her face as men called out prices. Her ears filled with their voices, each one a reminder that she was not free, not valued, only traded. She closed her eyes, wishing she could vanish into the dark. Then something strange happened. The voices fell quiet, not because the bidding ended, but because a shadow moved at the edge of the market. A tall figure stepped forward, not shouting, not laughing, simply walking toward the stage. His steps were calm, steady, like he did not belong in this dirty place. It was a human man. His face was stern, his clothes plain. Unlike the others, he carried no drink, no smirk. His eyes did not roam over the girls as if they were objects. Instead, his gaze was fixed, sharp and unreadable. The dealer's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly covered it. "Ah, a human customer," he boomed. "Rare to see one here. Come, friend, take a closer look. This one is fine, number 7, the best of tonight's lot. Guaranteed." The man did not answer. He stopped before the stage, hands at his sides. The crowd whispered. Humans were not common in this region. When they did appear, they were usually soldiers, traders, or wanderers, but never buyers of slaves. The dealer licked his lips, trying again. "Do you want to test her? She will serve well. I promise you satisfaction or your money back." Still, the man did not smile. His voice, when it came, was deep and calm. "How much?" The dealer blinked. "How much?" "Well, we start the bidding, yes?" I said how much," the man repeated. Silence spread. The crowd leaned in, sensing something unusual. No one spoke like that here. No one demanded without playing the dealer's game. The dealer shifted, then forced a laugh. "For you, human, special price. 1,500 credits." The man reached into his coat and pulled out a small chip. He tossed it onto the stage. The dealer caught it, scanned it, and his eyes widened. "Paid in full. No bargaining. No haggling. Just purchase, wait," someone shouted from the crowd. "I was bidding," another man cursed. "You can't just buy without—" The dealer raised his hands quickly. "The sale is done." "The human has paid in full." His smile returned wider than ever. "A fine choice, sir, a fine choice indeed. She is yours, take her. But remember, if she fails, money back." The crowd roared with laughter again, but their voices carried something new now. Curiosity, suspicion. Why had this man bought her? The girl's knees felt weak. She looked up for the first time, meeting the man's eyes. They were steady, unreadable, but not cruel. No hunger, no mockery, only something she could not name. The dealer shoved her forward, chains clinking around her wrists. She stumbled, nearly falling, but the man caught her before she hit the ground. For a moment she froze, her face inches from his chest. His hand on her arm was firm but gentle. The dealer laughed again. "Take her, human. Enjoy your night. If she does not please you, bring her back. My guarantee stands." The man did not reply. He only nodded once, guiding the girl away from the stage. The crowd parted as he passed, whispering among themselves. Some mocked. Some sneered. But others watched in silence, wondering why a human would spend so much on one alien girl. The dealer watched them go, his smile wide, but his eyes narrow. He had seen men like this before, men who did not buy for pleasure, men who caused trouble. As the man and the girl vanished into the night, the dealer muttered under his breath, "We'll see how long that one lasts." And so the auction ended. But the promise made that night, the promise of money back if she failed, was only the beginning of something far greater and far more dangerous. The marketplace had grown quiet behind them. Only the echo of laughter and neon lights remained as the human led the girl away. His steps were slow but steady, as though he had walked this path many times before. The girl, still bound in thin chains, followed with trembling legs. Her mind raced with questions. Why had he bought her so easily? Why had he not touched her the way others always did? What did he want? She dared not ask. She had learned long ago that silence was safer. The road twisted through the edge of the settlement. Cheap stalls faded into broken houses, and broken houses faded into silence. The night air was cold. Above them, 2 moons hung heavy, watching like pale eyes. The man finally stopped in front of a small cabin made of old metal sheets and wood. It looked nothing like the homes of rich traders. There was no guard, no luxury, only a faint light glowing through a window. He opened the door and gestured for her to step inside. For a moment the girl hesitated. Slaves were never given choice. Orders were shouted, chains pulled, lashes given if they delayed. Yet he simply stood there waiting. Her fear told her to stay outside, but her legs carried her forward. The cabin smelled of smoke and dried herbs. A small fire burned in the corner, giving warmth to the single room. There was a wooden table, a chair, and a narrow bed. It was simple but not cruel. The man closed the door behind them. He walked to the table and set down a bag he had been carrying. Without looking at her, he spoke in a calm voice, "You can sit." The words made her flinch, not because they were harsh, but because they were not. Slaves were not told to sit. Slaves were told to kneel, to obey, to endure. She stood frozen, unsure if it was a trick. The man glanced at her. His eyes were steady, unreadable, but not filled with the hunger she feared. "Sit," he said again, softer this time. Slowly, she lowered herself onto the edge of the chair. Her chains clinked against the wood. The man reached into the bag and pulled out a small loaf of bread and a container of water. He placed them on the table before her. Her stomach twisted at the sight. She had not eaten real food in days, but hunger wrestled with suspicion. She kept her hands folded in her lap, her eyes down. "Eat," the man said simply. She shook her head quickly. "No, master," she whispered, her voice almost too soft to hear. I will not take what is not meant for me." The man studied her for a long moment. Then he reached forward, broke the loaf in half, and took a bite himself. Slowly, calmly, he chewed and swallowed. After that, he pushed the other half toward her. Her eyes widened. He was showing her it was safe. The gesture broke something inside her defenses. With shaking fingers, she picked up the bread. The first bite filled her with warmth she had almost forgotten. Tears stung her eyes, though she tried to hide them. The man did not speak again. He sat across the table, eating quietly as though this moment was ordinary. For her it was not. Later, when the fire had burned lower, the girl sat curled on the chair, unsure if she was allowed to rest. The man stood near the window, looking out into the night. He seemed lost in thought, but his body was still, like stone. Finally, she gathered the courage to ask, her voice trembling. Why did you buy me?" The man did not turn. For a long time, he said nothing. Then with the same calm tone, he answered, "Because no one else should have." Her chest tightened. The words confused her, but they carried weight, a truth she could feel even if she did not understand it. He finally faced her, his expression steady. "You are not a thing," he said. "Not to me," she stared, unable to reply. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Not once. That night, she lay on the floor beside the fire, wrapped in a blanket he had given her. The chains on her wrists still remained, but for the first time in years they felt lighter, as if they might one day be gone. She closed her eyes, but sleep did not come easily. Questions turned in her mind, mixing with fragile sparks of hope. Was he telling the truth? Would he harm her tomorrow? Or had her life changed tonight in ways she could not yet see? Outside, the night was quiet. But far away, the dealer still laughed in his stall, telling others that the human would soon return with disappointment. He did not know that something different had begun. Something even he could not control. The cabin was quiet when the morning came. Only the crackle of dying firewood and the soft whistle of wind broke the silence. Dust floated in the weak light slipping through the small window. The girl sat on the floor, her knees drawn to her chest. Her wrists were still bound in thin metal chains, the cold marks pressing into her skin. She stared at them, her eyes empty. Chains had always been there. They had become part of her body, part of her life. Across the room, the man moved with quiet steps. He poured water into a pot and set it above the fire. He did not speak. He did not look at her often. Yet even in his silence, there was no cruelty. His actions were steady, patient, almost careful, as though he did not wish to frighten her further. The girl's stomach twisted with hunger, but she kept her lips closed. She did not dare ask. She remembered the market, the dealer's mocking voice, guaranteed satisfaction. The words echoed in her ears. This man had bought her. He must want something. He must be waiting. Still, nothing came. The pot hissed as steam rose. The man placed a small bowl of broth on the floor near her. He did not push it into her hands, only set it within reach. Eat, he said simply. She shook her head quickly. No, master, she whispered, her voice fragile. I will not displease you. The man crouched down so his eyes were level with hers. For the first time she noticed something unsettling. He was not angry. Not even impatient. His gaze was firm but calm, like someone trying to solve a puzzle. I am not your master, he said. Her breath caught. The words sounded strange, almost dangerous, like something forbidden. She lowered her head at once, afraid of punishment for even hearing them. The man stood again, leaving her with the food. He did not explain himself further. Hours passed. The girl sat in silence, her thoughts clashing with the quiet around her. She tried to understand. Why would he say such a thing? Why would he feed her, clothe her, give her rest, if not to demand something later? Her fear wrestled with her curiosity. She wanted to ask, but the chains on her wrists reminded her. Slaves who asked questions were punished. She watched him as he worked. He repaired tools, mended clothes, gathered wood. His movements were steady, practiced. Not once did he reach for her. Not once did his voice turn sharp. Her mind told her not to believe it. Her heart whispered something else. That evening, as shadows stretched across the floor, the man finally walked toward her. Her chest tightened as he stopped in front of her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small iron key. Her breath froze. He crouched again and, without a word, slid the key into the lock around her wrists. With a click, the chains fell open. They clattered against the floor like dead weight. The girl's eyes widened. Her arms felt strange, suddenly lighter, almost unbalanced. She rubbed her wrists, staring at the marks left behind. The man did not keep the key. He left it on the table in plain sight, as if daring her to use it again if needed. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. Why free me? The man's reply was calm, almost tired. Because you should not live in chains. Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but belief was dangerous. Trust had always led to pain. She lowered her eyes again, silent, unable to form words. That night she did not sleep. She lay near the fire, staring at the ceiling. The chains were gone, but her mind still wore them. Every time she moved her wrists, she expected the bite of cold metal. Every sound made her flinch. Across the room, the man slept in his chair, arms folded, his face unreadable. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with unspoken questions. Why had he bought her? Why had he freed her? Why did he treat her as though she were not what the dealer had promised? Her heart whispered one thought she dared not admit, even to herself. Maybe he is different, but the silence offered no answer. Only the crackle of firewood, the quiet breath of the man, and the weight of everything she could not say. Far away in the noisy market, the dealer laughed and told stories of the fool human who had wasted credits. He assured his friends that soon the man would return, angry and disappointed. But the man did not return. And the girl, though still afraid, touched her bare wrists again and again, as though testing if freedom was real. The night passed slowly, with chains on the floor, silence in the air, and a fragile hope hidden deep in her heart. The morning sun painted the cabin in pale gold. Dust floated in the air like tiny stars caught in the light. For the girl, it felt unreal. She woke with bare wrists. The chains still lay on the floor, but they no longer held her. She sat quietly, hugging her knees. Her body remembered the weight of the cuffs, but now there was only the faint trace of red marks, She rubbed them softly, afraid that if she blinked too long, the chains might return. The man was already awake. He moved around the cabin with calm steps, collecting tools, placing wood near the fire. His voice had not broken the silence yet, and she did not dare to speak first. Finally, he turned and looked at her. His eyes, sharp but not cruel, rested on the chains lying near her feet. He did not take them back. He did not hide the key. He only said in a low, steady voice, "You are free to move." Her heart stopped. Free? The word was strange, heavy, almost frightening. She stared at him, trying to understand. In her world, no master had ever said that. Freedom was something told in stories, not in truth. Her lips trembled. Do you mean I can go?" The man nodded once. "The door is not locked." Her breath caught in her throat. She turned her head toward the wooden door. The handle was right there. No guard, no chain, no whip waiting, just wood and sunlight. Her legs shook as she stood. Slowly, step by step, she walked to the door. Her hand lifted toward the handle, but it froze just before touching. Her body shook, her mind screaming two voices at once. "Run, stay, run, stay." The man did not move. He only watched her with the same steady gaze. She closed her eyes, pulled the handle, and opened the door. Warm light spilled across her face. The world outside stretched wide. Empty hills. Tall grass swaying in the wind, the endless blue of the morning sky. No walls, no dealer, no laughter. Her chest rose and fell quickly. She stepped one foot outside, then another. The ground was soft beneath her toes. She could run now. She could vanish into the hills, escape before he called her back, but he did not call. The man's voice came at last. Calm and even. "If you want to go, then go. No one will stop you." Her heart raced faster. The silence around them was heavier than chains. She looked over her shoulder. He was still inside the cabin, standing near the table, not reaching for her, not holding any weapon. No one had ever given her a choice. Tears burned her eyes. She turned back to the open land. Freedom was there, so close she could taste it, but her feet would not move. Every step she imagined ended the same way. Hunger, cold, capture, another cage. And behind her, in that small cabin, was something strange. Not kindness exactly, not safety yet, but something she had never felt before. Patience. Her legs weakened. Slowly, she stepped back inside. The door creaked shut behind her. She lowered her head, ashamed of her fear. I don't know where to go." The man gave no reaction. He only nodded as though he had expected this. "Then stay. For now." The rest of the day passed in silence. She helped gather wood without being told. She placed water in the pot without being ordered. Every small action felt like a test, a new shape of life she had never known. At one point, she dropped a piece of wood. Her body flinched, bracing for a strike. But none came. The man simply picked it up and set it by the fire. No word of anger, no lash of punishment. Her heart did not calm. If anything, the silence made her more restless. Why is he like this? What does he want? That night, as the moons rose, the man set his chair near the window, watching the hills in silence. The girl sat close to the fire, wrapped again in the blanket. The door remained unlocked. Her wrists, though free, still felt heavy. She traced the marks with her fingers. Slowly, she whispered to herself, almost afraid of her own words. Maybe freedom is not running. Maybe it is staying. The fire cracked softly, and outside, the wind carried the sound of distant laughter from the market, laughter that no longer touched her. For the first time in years, she closed her eyes and did not dream of chains. The day had been calm, but the evening sky turned restless. Clouds gathered like dark giants swallowing the last colors of sunset. The wind picked up, sharp and cold, rattling the cabin walls. By the time the moons rose, a storm was brewing across the hills. Inside the cabin, the girl sat near the fire, her blanket pulled tight around her. The chains were gone, but fear still clung to her like a second skin. Every crash of thunder made her flinch. Every howl of wind pressed her smaller into the corner. The man checked the shutters, closing them one by one. His movements were steady, unshaken by the rising storm. He had lived through nights like this before, but for the girl, each sound outside was a reminder of her past. The cages rattling in the wind, the dealers shouting, the punishments delivered in darkness. Storms had always brought cruelty with them. When lightning cracked across the sky, the cabin glowed white for an instant. The girl gasped and buried her face into her knees. She whispered, not knowing if anyone could hear, "Please, don't let it happen again." The man turned at her voice. For a moment he only studied her, his face unreadable. Then he walked to the fire, pulled another blanket from his chair, and placed it gently across her shoulders. The girl stiffened. She expected roughness, but his hand rested lightly only for a moment. The weight of the blanket was warm, steady, grounding her trembling body. "You're safe here," he said, his voice calm against the roar outside. She lifted her head slowly. Safe. The word felt fragile, like glass. She wanted to believe it, but her heart resisted. Safe was a lie she had heard before, always followed by chains and pain. Yet something in his tone was different. He spoke not as a master, not as a dealer, but as someone making a promise he intended to keep. Hours passed, and the storm grew louder. Rain hammered the roof, water slipping through cracks, dripping into small puddles. The girl sat awake, her eyes wide, watching every shadow. The man did not order her to sleep. Instead, he sat near the door, his body like a wall between her and the chaos outside. When thunder shook the cabin, she whispered again, almost too soft to hear, "Why are you kind to me?" The man did not answer right away. His eyes were fixed on the door, his jaw tight. Finally he said, "Because no one was kind to you before." Her breath caught. The simple truth of his words pierced deeper than any chain had ever done. She stared at him, the question forming on her lips, how does he know? But she could not speak it. Instead, silence filled the space between them, broken only by the storm. Near midnight, a strong gust slammed the door open. Rain burst inside, soaking the wooden floor. The girl screamed and crawled backward in terror, her body curled tight, expecting shouts, blows, punishment. But the man moved quickly, not with anger, but with purpose. He shut the door, hammered it closed, and turned back to her. His face was wet with rain, but his eyes were calm. "You're all right," he said firmly. He crouched beside her, meeting her frightened gaze. "It's only the storm. Nothing else." Her chest heaved as she tried to calm her breath. Slowly his words sank in. Nothing else. Only the storm. For the first time, she noticed how his presence shielded her from the chaos outside. His body, his voice, his patience, all of it stood between her and the fear clawing at her heart. The hours dragged on. The storm raged until the cabin shook with every gust. Yet somewhere between the thunder and the rain, the girl's eyes grew heavy. Wrapped in the blanket he had given her, she leaned against the wall, exhaustion breaking through her fear. Her last thought before sleep came was strange, almost impossible. Maybe he means it. Maybe I am safe here. When dawn broke, the storm was gone. The hills glistened under the light of two suns washed clean by rain. Birds sang timidly in the wet grass. Inside the cabin, the girl stirred awake. Her blanket was still warm. The man sat in his chair, half asleep but still near the door as if he had guarded it all night. She touched her wrists, bare and light. She touched the blanket, soft and real, and for the first time she whispered a word she had not spoken in years. "Thank you." Her voice was weak, but it carried more weight than chains ever had. The man's eyes opened. He gave no smile, no dramatic gesture, only a quiet nod as if those two words were enough. The hills were quiet after the storm, washed clean by the night of rain. For 2 days the girl had lived in the cabin without chains. She moved carefully, still unsure of her place, but she no longer shook at every shadow. The man had not touched her, not demanded anything. His silence was steady, his presence heavy, but it was not cruel. She was beginning to believe him. Just a little. But peace does not last in a world built on greed. Far away in the noisy marketplace, the dealer slammed his fist on the table. His fat face was twisted with anger. He told anyone who would listen how the fool human had stolen profit from him. "No man refuses my guarantee." He spat. "No one buys without returning for more. If he does not bring her back, then I will take her back." So he gathered his thugs, men with heavy boots, sharp knives, and dead eyes. They owed him favors, and tonight they would repay them. The dealer's laughter echoed in the alleys as they left the market together. The girl was outside the cabin when she heard it. The crunch of boots on wet ground, the low murmur of voices. Her blood froze. The sound was too many, too heavy. She ran inside, her breath quick. "They're coming," she whispered, her voice shaking. The man did not flinch. He set down the tool he had been holding and stood slowly. His eyes narrowed, calm but sharp, like steel drawn from its sheath. "Stay inside," he told her. The words hit her harder than the storm. "Stay?" She wanted to scream. "You don't understand, or they will kill you. They will take me back." Her chest tightened with panic, but her voice broke before she could protest. The door rattled as fists pounded against it. A voice shouted. The dealer's voice, loud and dripping with mockery. "Human. Open the door. You have something of mine. Return her or you'll regret it." The man opened the door himself. He did not hide, did not wait. He stepped outside, his figure tall in the pale light of the moons. The dealer stood with 4 thugs, each armed. His smile spread wide when he saw the girl's pale face through the window. "There she is," he sneered. "My property. Hand her over and maybe I let you live." The man's voice was steady. "She is not your property." Laughter burst from the dealer's mouth. His thugs laughed with him, though their eyes were cold. "Not my property? You bought her with your own hand," the dealer mocked. "Do you forget? You paid the price. That makes her mine to sell again, or yours to return. Don't play hero," the man's reply cut through the laughter. "She belongs to no one." The girl's heart pounded. She pressed herself against the wall, trembling. No one had ever said such words before. They sounded impossible, dangerous, but they burned like fire in her chest. The dealer's smile faded. His eyes narrowed, voice turning hard. "Then you've made your choice." He snapped his fingers. The thugs stepped forward, blades glinting in the moonlight. The fight was short, but brutal. The man moved like he had done this before. His strikes were fast, his stance firm. The first thug fell to the dirt with a broken arm. The second with blood spilling from his lip. The third tried to stab him, but the man twisted the blade from his grip and sent him crashing into the mud. The girl's hands shook as she watched from the window. Fear clawed at her throat. Every scream, every fall, every clash of fists felt like it would end with him lying broken. But each time he stood tall. Finally, only the dealer remained. His fat body trembled, but pride pushed him forward. He pulled a small pistol from his coat, pointing it at the man's chest. The girl gasped. Her body moved before her mind. She ran out the door, shouting, "No!" The dealer's eyes flicked to her, greedy and mocking. "See? Even she comes back to me." The man's hand moved like lightning. He grabbed the dealer's wrist, twisting hard until the pistol clattered to the ground. With one strike, the dealer was on his knees, coughing in the mud. The man's voice was low, sharp as a blade. "Come again and you won't leave alive." The dealer's pride shattered under that calm tone. He spat into the dirt, gathered his broken thugs, and stumbled back into the night. The girl stood frozen, the wind tugging at her hair. Her chest rose and fell quickly. She stared at the man. The image burned into her mind. Not just his strength, but his words. She whispered, trembling, You stood for me." The man met her gaze. His face was unreadable, his eyes steady. No one should live in chains. Tears filled her eyes. She had heard men laugh, mock, threaten. She had heard promises of pain and false safety. But she had never heard this, and for the first time she believed. The night after the fight was heavy with silence. The thugs were gone, the dealer humiliated, but the girl could not calm her racing heart. She sat near the fire, the blanket clutched tight, her eyes fixed on the man. He had fought for her. He had risked his life for someone who was nothing in the eyes of others. She wanted to thank him, to speak, but her voice stayed locked inside. The man sat in his chair, quiet as always. His hands were cut, his lip bruised, but he showed no pain. He only stared at the fire, as though the flames carried all the weight of his thoughts. Finally he spoke. "You're safe now." The words felt strange. She had heard them before, but never believed them. Yet tonight they sounded different. His voice carried no demand, no hidden trap. Just calm truth, her lips parted. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Can I stay with you?" The cabin fell quiet again. She lowered her head quickly, ashamed of her boldness. Slaves were not supposed to ask. Slaves were not supposed to want, but the man did not scold her. His voice was steady. "If you want to stay, then stay. No one will force you." Tears welled in her eyes. No one had ever asked her what she wanted. No one had given her a choice. Tonight, for the first time, she had one. The days that followed felt different. The storm had passed, the air was fresh, and the cabin was filled with small signs of change. The girl no longer sat in the corner. She began helping with small tasks, fetching water, folding cloth, placing wood by the fire. She still moved carefully, always glancing at him for approval, but he never shouted, never struck. He only nodded as though each small act was enough. At night she slept without chains. The nightmares still came, but they faded faster, replaced by strange dreams. Dreams of walking under open skies without fear. Dreams of choosing her own path. The man said little, but his actions spoke louder than words. When her hands shook carrying the water, he steadied the bucket for her. When she cut her finger on wood, he wrapped it gently in cloth. When she froze at loud thunder, he lit another fire and sat closer, saying nothing but reminding her she was not alone. Each moment built something fragile between them, something new. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, she stood at the doorway of the cabin. The land stretched wide before her, endless grass, open sky, a horizon with no chains. She breathed deep, the air cool and free. The man joined her, his presence quiet but strong. "You can leave if you wish," he said, his voice calm. "No one will stop you." She looked at him, her chest tightening. The words were true, and she knew it now. The door had no lock, the hills had no walls. Freedom was real, but freedom was not only running away, it was also choosing where to belong. Her lips trembled, but her voice was clear. "I want to stay." The man nodded once, as if he had expected her answer. No smile, no celebration, only calm acceptance. But in that moment she felt something warm, a promise unspoken. That night she sat by the fire, her wrists bare, her heart lighter than it had ever been. The dealer's words echoed faintly in her memory. Guaranteed satisfaction or your money back. She almost laughed through her tears. That promise had been a lie, but the human had made a different promise, one without words, and he had kept it. For the first time in her life, she was not a number, not a product, not property. She was simply herself. And sitting in that small cabin with the storm behind them and the future ahead, she whispered a new word, one she had never dared to speak before. Home. The fire crackled. The man gave his quiet nod. And the night carried no chains, only the beginning of something new.